My name is Alan. I am 82 years old. Once I was a strong man with hands that knew no rest and a heart that beat for my family. Today my mornings begin with the creaking of bones and a cup of cold coffee that I make for myself. My home is a small house on the outskirts of Gaylord, Michigan. Everything around here seems familiar, but at the same time, foreign. My wife, Margaret, died 7 years ago. After she was gone, everything around turned gray. Our children, John and Rachel, have long lived in big cities, immersed in their own affairs, worries, careers. John is a lawyer in Chicago, Rachel is a doctor in Detroit. They come only for the holidays, and sometimes even then they don't find the opportunity. My granddaughter Lily recently wrote me a letter via Messenger, but I was never able to answer, the phone froze, and I don't understand this device. Every morning I go out onto the porch with a stick in my hand and look at the tree that I planted back in 1983. It has grown strong, wide, and has spread its branches, as I thought then, it would provide shade for my grandchildren. And now, it only provides shade for me. The day passes slowly. I walk in circles, from the chair to the kitchen, from the kitchen to the old albums. Sometimes I go to the park, sit on a bench, listen to voices, strange, fast, indifferent. People walk past without saying hello, without looking into my eyes. Once I was familiar with every second person in the city. Now, no one even remembers my name. Last week I came to the supermarket. I took a long time to choose bread, my hands were shaking. The young girl, the cashier, sighed when I was paying with coins. Behind me, a man grumbled, "Grandpa decided to stop the world this morning." I wanted to say something, but my tongue seemed to stick to the roof of my mouth. I left in silence. At home, I looked at my reflection in the mirror for a long time. My face was wrinkled, my hair was gray, my eyes were tired. Do I still have the right to be among people? I asked myself. I'm not complaining. It's just, it hurts. Not my body, no. My soul. It hurts from the silence I live in. It hurts from the indifference that steals the remnants of my dignity. It hurts from the fact that I'm no longer seen. I exist, but it's as if transparent. And every night, before I go to bed, I remember one thing: it used to be different. I used to be important. Needed. Beloved. And I'll tell you about it. Because, perhaps, in these words there is still a piece of my voice left that deserves to be heard. I remember the smell of the air that spring of 1965 when I first saw Margaret. She was working in the library then. She had wavy blonde hair that fell to her shoulders and a smile that made it seem like the city was suddenly getting warmer. I was still a student then, working construction at night and studying engineering during the day. We met by chance, but the next week I knew for sure, she was the one. We were building our lives from scratch. We bought an old house, painted the walls ourselves, fought, made up, learned how to be parents. When John was born, I worked 2 shifts. I wanted him to have everything that I didn't have. And when Rachel came along, we already had a little more, and I could read them stories in the evenings, plant trees in the yard, drive them to school. In the 80s I started my own construction company. Everyone in the district knew me. My workers called me Mr. Allen with respect. I was never a boss who shouted. I was there with them, with a hammer, with a saw, with my hands in the cement. I taught them how to build with love, not just for money. Our facilities were recognized as the most reliable. When I received an award from the local administration, I cried like a boy. Because it was not only my victory. It was gratitude for all the years when I sacrificed time, health, to leave something behind. In the evening, after work, I would return home, where Margaret was waiting for me with dinner, and the children with hugs. We played board games, read the Bible aloud, sang by the fireplace. In those years, the house was full of laughter, noise, life. The children looked at me with admiration. I was their hero. At that time, I did not yet know how quickly time would pass. When John got married, I helped build him a new house. Brick by brick, tree by tree, I put my heart into it. And when Lily was born, I made a wooden cradle for her with my own hands. In those years I was needed. Not only as a labor force. As a person, as a father, as a grandfather. Now everything is different. I sit by the fireplace alone. The same boards that I once nailed with passion now creak under my feet. Once I built for them, and now I can barely keep the house in order. And when I remember that voice of Lily, "Grandpa, you are the best," my heart aches. Because I haven't heard it for a long time. It seems that her voice has become a part of the past, like Margaret's laughter. I don't know when exactly the world changed. When what was once valued became forgotten. But I remember. And this, perhaps, is what still keeps me on earth. Everything changed gradually. First, short phone calls. Then, occasional postcards. And then, silence. The first time I realized something was wrong was when John came to visit me in the winter. He came in, looked around the house, and said, "Dad, maybe it's time to think about a nursing home." I didn't even know what to say then. I wanted to shout that I was still strong, that I cleaned, cooked, and even planted flowers myself every day. But I kept quiet. Because how could I prove to my child that you weren't a burden yet? Every year, the children began to treat me more like a problem than a father. Rachel called once every 2 weeks, quickly, between patients, her voice cold, like a duty. Lily, she's grown up. She's 19 now. She has her own world, her own friends. The last time I saw her was 2 years ago. She gave me a mug with the words, "Best Grandpa" written on it, and then stopped answering my letters. I tried to be active. I went to the library, to church, and even joined a veterans club. But even there, it was like an emptiness. Young people look at us like museum exhibits. Once, I reached out to help a teenager who had dropped his books, and he waved them away and said, "Thanks, old man, I'll manage." Not angry, not rude, just indifferent. At the hospital, they told me I had the initial stage of arthritis. The doctor, a young guy, was in a hurry when he spoke. He said, "Well, at your age, it's normal." At my age. But what about my feelings? My desire to live, to feel, to breathe more. I'm no longer a person, I'm an age, a statistic, a line in my insurance policy. They push me in public transport. They pass me by in the store. They forget me in the post office. The neighbors have changed a long time ago. Young families who don't greet each other. I once took out the trash, and a little boy from the yard shouted to his mother, "Mom, the ghosts are out." They laughed, and I went back to the house and didn't leave for several days. I wake up every morning with the thought, why else? And every night I fall asleep with the hope that maybe someone will call tomorrow. Someone will come. Someone will remember. But the most painful thing is the silence. When you sit in the kitchen, and around the wall you could hear your children's laughter, and the table where they once had dinner, and now there is only silence. It all started the day I fell on the steps near the porch. It was a cool morning, a little slippery. I was holding a bag of groceries in my hand, milk, bread, some apples. I stepped on the bottom step, and suddenly, like lightning, my body went forward, my legs didn't have time to keep my balance. I fell hard. My shoulder hit the concrete, the apples rolled across the yard. I lay there, gritting my teeth, because screaming was useless. No one would hear. No one would come out. I don't know how long I lay there. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 30. I just lay there and thought, this is the end. I'll lie here until my body cools down. I'll go, alone, silently, among the broken apples. But then I heard a voice. "Young, horse, sir, are you okay?" A guy stood in front of me. Of average height, in a tracksuit, with a bottle of water in his hand. He helped me up, supported me by the shoulder, and sat me down on the step. Then he silently gathered the apples, carried the bags to the kitchen. He came back with a blanket and wrapped me up. His name was Michael. He lived across the street, and I had seen him before, rarely, because he always had his headphones on, always in a hurry. But that day he stopped. And that changed everything. We started talking. At first about little things, the weather, the shops, the prices. And then about life. It turned out he had recently returned from the army. He had lost his father. He was searching for meaning. I told him about Margaret, about how we had built a life from nothing. About how I could once lift 30 kilograms of cement with one hand. About how now I could barely lift a spoon. He listened. Without judgment. Without haste. With a sincerity I hadn't felt in years. He came every day, just like that. He brought coffee, newspapers, once even a toolbox. "Alan," he said, "let's mend the fence together. I'm the hands, you're the head. Tell me how to do it right." We worked together. Slowly but surely. I showed, he listened. And then one evening he brought a laptop. An old one, with a broken corner. "Alan, let's write down your story. Let the world hear it." And we started. In the evenings I dictated, he typed. When I got tired, he would make tea, say, "A few more lines. Then we'll rest." For the first time in many years, I felt, I was needed. Not because I could give something material. But because I am. That my life is not just a collection of memories. It is a value. It is an experience. It is a piece of something bigger. And Michael, this guy who stopped at the right moment, became my window into the world. And then one evening, when we were finishing another chapter, he said, "Alan, let's start a blog. Let other older people tell their stories too. You'll be the first." I laughed. "Michael, I'm 82. Who's going to listen?" He said, "Those who need it. Believe it." And then, for the first time in a long time, I believed. In myself. In people. In the fact that even in old age, you can start again. After a few weeks of our evenings together, I started waking up with different thoughts. No longer, what will I do today, but what will I tell today? My days became more meaningful. I looked through old letters, notes, looked up dates, recalled stories that once seemed mundane but now took on weight. I no longer just existed, I lived. One day, I gathered my courage and called John myself. My voice trembled, my fingers slid over the buttons, but I pressed. He was surprised. "Dad? Did you call?" I answered briefly, "I want to invite you. I have something to share." He promised to come the next week. When John and Rachel arrived, it was the first time in a long time that I saw them not through a screen, but in person. We sat in the kitchen, and I placed the printed chapters of my future blog in front of them. And he said, "Here, read it. This is not just my story. It is yours too. If you ever forget who you were, here will be a reminder." They read in silence. Rachel's eyes filled with tears, and John, silent, sighed and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad, I didn't wait for the words." I waited for the moment, and it came. The moment when the wall of indifference began to crack. A week later, Lily called herself. "Grandpa, my mom sent me some of your text. You write cooler than some bloggers. Can I come over for the weekend? I want to help design the website." I smiled. "Of course, honey." We created a blog. We called it Voice of Memory. I published my stories on it, and Michael collected feedback. People started writing. The older ones, with gratitude that someone had voiced their pain. The younger ones, with surprise and respect. One guy wrote, "After your words, I hugged my grandfather. For the first time in years. And then I realized, you don't have to change the world globally. Sometimes it's enough to change someone's day, someone's opinion. And that's a huge victory in itself." I didn't just become part of the family again. I became a voice for those who haven't been heard for a long time. Now my day starts with a cup of coffee and comments on the site. I respond, share memories, inspire. Michael created a video channel where we read my stories aloud. Rachel recorded an audio version for libraries. John even joined publications with legal advice for the elderly. And Lily, my dear Lily, now helps other grandchildren better understand their grandfathers. I'm no longer hiding from the world. I'm in it again. With my wrinkles, scars, memories. And with the faith that even in the evening of life, you can find dawn. Sitting this morning on the same porch where I fell not so long ago and mentally said goodbye to life, I look at the same tree planted 42 years ago. It has grown taller, its branches have spread even wider, its leaves rustle in the light breeze. But now its shadow no longer seems lonely. Because Michael is nearby, fixing something in the shed. Sometimes John and Rachel come over. And Lily brings her friends, shows me where the memories that Grandpa writes about lived. I am no longer tormented by silence. Now it is filled with memories, letters, the voices of readers, laughter. I have understood one thing: old age is not a sentence. It is a state. And it does not have to be lonely. We, the elderly, have something to say. We are like books that have not burned down. We are not shadows. We are a source. Youth often looks at us through the prism of weakness. But we are not only weak bodies. We are experiences, stories, hearts that beat in the hardest times. And everyone who has a grandmother or grandfather has a chance to learn more about themselves, just by listening. I have learned a lot in recent months. The most important thing is not to wait for someone to notice you. You have to show yourself that you are still alive. That your heart still beats. That you can still love, dream, share. If I could address everyone who feels forgotten, I would say, you are still needed. The world has no right to devalue you just because of your age. If no one wants to listen, speak louder. If the door is closed, knock again. And if your heart hurts, don't hide it. Show it. Because pain is also a part of life. And that means you are still here. My life is already autumn. But it is golden. With its cold, winds, rains, but also beauty. I have no regrets. Because even if I have little left, I know, the last pages of my book are not empty. They are the strongest. And when I am gone, I want one thing to remain, the feeling that even in silence you can be heard. Even in old age, to be a light. And remember, it doesn't matter how old you are, it matters how you live every moment. You are not a shadow. You are a story worth telling.
Subscribe and like and tell your friends about this video.